Hello, welcome to experimental psychology, and I have chose to separate this one because this is not only for experimental psychology, okay? Para to sa kung paano tayo kukuha ng research participants, and we're going to talk about the probability and non-probability and sampling techniques. Okay, so selecting research participants. Not everyone can participate, and the outcome of the study may depend on the way in which the participants are selected. Okay? So, um, alam naman natin na hindi lahat ng participants or the population, hindi natin siya pwedeng makuha lahat at sila yung gawin natin participants. Okay? Hindi lahat ng population na gusto nating makuha ay siya maging participants. However, we want to generalize yung makukuha nating participants for the whole population. Alright? And for this one, kung ganun yung gagawin natin, ay dapat mainam yung selection of participants natin or yung sa selection technique natin sa pagkuha ng participants. Okay? Kasi nga, hindi lahat sila pwedeng sumali at para ma-generalize natin yung makukuha nating sample, okay, sa buong participants, sa buong population rather, ay kailangan maayos yung pagkuha natin ng selection of participants. Researcher must develop a plan for selecting a participant so that the individual in this study constitute a reasonable representation of the broader population. Okay? So, as what I'm saying, dapat inline yung kukunin nating participants sa population na gusto nating makuha. Okay? And this is an example of kailangan natin ma-identify yung population na gusto nating kunin. Okay? This will serve as a population. Sorry for the graph, and some of these are not equal. Isa-isa lang yung nakuha. Okay? But this is the representation of the whole population. And then, from that population, kukuha tayo ng samples. At itong samples na to ay ang magja-generalize sa buong population. Okay? Kailangan hindi ka basta-basta kukuha ng ng participants lang na gusto mo. Kukunin mo ang participants na para mag-represent sa population, dapat they have the same characteristics. Okay? This is the flow from the larger population. Okay? Kukuha tayo ng sample, and then the sample is magre-represent ng whole population. The sample, the specific set of individuals who are participated in the study. The actual research study is conducted. So, dito papasok yung dito tayo magkakandak ng research sa sample na nakuha natin. And then the results from the sample are generalized to the population. Okay? So, ganun yung cycle niya. And dito, sinasabi lang dito na from the whole population, okay, the entire set of individuals who have the characteristic required by the researcher, doon tayo kukuha ng sample. The accessible population, ibig sabihin ko ano lang yung makuha nating sample na with the same characteristics or accessible lang na makuha natin, yun yung makukuha nating sample. And then, this sample would generalize for the whole population. Okay? How to obtain a sample? We have representativeness of sample refers to extent to which the characteristic of the sample accurately reflect the characteristic of the population. As what I'm saying earlier, na kailangan they have the same characteristics. Okay? Halimbawa, ang kukunin mong sample ay mga home for the aged. Okay? Dapat yung kukunin mong home for the aged na sample, they have the same characteristic na pwede mo ma-generalize. Lagi natin tatandaan, example, kung nasa home for the aged ang participants mo, ay not all of them born dun sa specific place or lumaki dun sa specific place kasi kinumbahin sila doon sa loob ng institution. Okay? Dapat, ang kukunin mo ay has the same characteristics pa rin. However, pwede mo siya magamit kung hindi mo naman gustong sukatin or hindi naman yun yung patutungkulan ng study mo. Okay? Kung taliwas yun sa gusto mong makuha. Okay? Representative sample, a sample with the same characteristic as the population as what I'm saying earlier. Okay? Example nga ay paano kung ang kinuha mong representative sample ay hindi swak dun sa characteristic ng population na gusto mong makuha. And magkakaroon tayo ng problema kasi hindi natin siya ma-generalize sa research as representative ng buong population. We have threats, biased sample. Okay? Sample with different characteristics from those of the population. Okay? Halimbawa ay dun sa sinasabi natin kanina na home for the aged. Okay? Not all of the home for the aged na living in the home for not all people na nakalagay dun sa institution ng home for the aged, hindi lahat yun ay hindi nakapagtapos. Okay? Hindi lahat doon ay walang pinag-aralan. Okay? Kasi when we say home for the aged, may connotation yung iba na pag home for the aged, di nakapagtapos. Okay? So, not all participants or nandoon ay has the same characteristic. Dahil nga, sa iba't iba sila na pinanggaling at nilagay sila sa isang grupo. Okay? Magkakaroon doon ng threats. Halimbawa is kukunin mo ang level ng kanilang emotional stability. Kung may research na nagsasabi na kung ang tao na mas nakagraduate ka ng college or undergrad or ay mas mataas ang emotional stability mo, hindi mo siya ma-generalize sa lahat kasi meron ka doong isang participants na halimbawa, yung educational level niya is mas mataas. Okay? So, nagkakaroon doon ng threats. Also, selection bias or sampling bias. Okay? Occurs when participants or subjects are selected in a manner that increases the probability of obtaining a biased sample. By the way, for this one, tulad nga ng sasabi natin kanina is the educational attainment. Halimbawa, kung ang research participant na gusto mo makuha ay emotional stability, okay, ng mga tao nakatira doon, dapat tinitingnan natin yung also must see yung educational attainment. Kung may nagsasabi ng RL na kapag nakapagtapos ka, ay mas mataas ang emotional stability mo, something like that, okay? So, dapat, as what I'm saying earlier, same sila ng characteristics. Para maiwasan to, yung mga biases na yon, dapat tama yung pagkuha mo ng sampling technique. Okay? Sampling technique or also known as sampling technique procedure on obtaining participants, pwede ding sampling procedure. Okay? So, the question would be, gaano ba dapat, how large the sample should be to be representative? Okay? A sample size that representative of the population. Okay? Yun yung sample size na kung saan ay yung magre-representa sa buong population. Meron ba tayong exact number? Okay? However, dun with that question or with this question, sinasabi na wala daw exact number pero pwede tayong tumingin sa mga RLs or review-related literature or general guidance that can help you to choose a sample size. May mga guidelines tayo na sinusunod para gaano nga ba kalaki ang sample size na dapat natin kunin. If that topic that you have on your end is conducted one, pwede kayong mag-refer dun sa ginamit, okay, na population, na sample size ng isang population. Okay? However, we have law of large number. The larger sample size, the more likely it is that values obtained from the sample are similar to the actual values of the population. So, sa statistics, meron tayong tinatawag na bigger the sample is, the more accurately it represents the population. So, kung mas madaming sample, ibig sabihin, mas accurate mo, ma-generalize yun sa buong population. And we have here the graph. Okay? We have here the number of scores in samples, and this is the average distance between sample mean. Okay? So, ipinapakita sa graph na to na kapag mas madami yung number of scores in samples or number of population, mas mare-represent mo siya doon sa population. Okay? Or kapag mas madami ang mean score na nakuha mo, ay mas ma-generalize mo siya doon sa number of the mean ng population. Okay? And meaning, there is no simple solution to determining how many individuals should be in a sample. Review published reports or similar research studies. See how many participants they use. Ibig sabihin, pwede natin review yung mga published documents or published reports. Tingnan natin kung ano yung mga flaws doon. And pwede natin makuha or makakuha tayo ng guidelines from that published reports. The larger the sample tends to be more representative and that increases the chances of successfully this study as well. Now, let's move to sampling basics. Sampling is the process of selecting individuals for the study. Ito yung tawag na kung paano yung pagkuha natin ng mga participants para sa study, or also known as sampling method, sampling technique, or sampling procedure. And ang mga researcher, marami silang nakuha na iba't ibang klase ng sampling technique, and matatakal natin yung iba sa mga sampling technique na yon. Okay? We have here probability sampling. The odds of selecting a particular individual are known and can be calculated. Halimbawa, you have 100 participants, okay? 1 over 100. Ibig sabihin, sa 100 participant, may chance sila na mabunot or maging participants. Okay? So, alam na natin yung probability sampling. Sa probability sampling, lahat sila equal yung chance na mabunot or maging participants. Okay? We also have non-probability, and matatakal natin yung mamaya. And we also have random process, procedure that reduces one outcome from set of possible outcomes. Yun nga yung sinasabi natin, 1:100. Ibig sabihin, sa 100 participants, meron silang one chance na mabunot doon. Okay? Or, sinasabi din also, if each individual in the population of 100 people is equally likely to be selected, then the probability of selection is 1 over 100 for each person. Okay? And important conditions of probability sampling. The exact size of the population must be known, and it must be possible to list all the individuals. Okay, so dapat meron tayong data na kung gaano ba kadami yung population. Okay? Yun yung sinasabi sa probability. Each individual in the population must have a specific probability of selection. Dapat equal yung chance na sila ay ma-select. Next is selection must be random process. Every possible outcome is equally likely. Halimbawa, nagtotoss ka ng coin, equal yung head sa tail, it can be head or tail, or random process, dapat equal yung possible outcome na makuha sila. Alright? We also have non-probability sampling. Odds of selected participants are not known. For this one, we do not have, researchers do not know the population size and cannot list the members of the population. Okay? Yun yung sa non-probability sampling. Ibig sabihin, kung wala or hindi mo alam kung yung population size, wala tong equal chance. Okay? So, kailan natin gagamit ang non-probability? If there is no extensive data. Papasok dito yung representative sample na tutukoy natin kanina. Uses common sense with an effort to maintain representativeness and avoid bias. Okay? For example, if the child care center includes only white, middle-class children, then the sample definitely does not represent the target population of preschool children. In general, non-probability risk of producing a biased sample than does probability sampling. Okay? And here we have question. A researcher plans to select a sample from each of the following populations, which would probably be a probability sample and which would be a non-probability sample. We have here letter A. The population consists of the class of entering freshmen at a local college. Letter B, we have the population consists of 12-month-old infants. So, with this letter, saan dito si non-probability at saka saan dito si probability? Lagi natin tatandaan na si non-probability ay hindi alam kung gaano kadami ang population. Okay? So, for this, the population consists of a class of entering freshmen at a local college versus the population consists of 12-month-old infants. Dito, si letter A, siya ang non-probability. Kasi wala tayong bilang kung gaano kadami yung pumapasok dun sa college kung saang age group sila nanggaling. So that is why siya si non-probability. Sa letter B, the population consists of 12-month-old infants, may specific tayong edad ng bata or 1-year-old. That is why it is letter B is the probability. Okay? We have now the probability sampling methods. Simple random sampling. It is that each individual in the population has equal chance of being selected. For this, hindi ito biased. Bakit? Kasi sa simple random sampling, example is ilalagay mo lahat ng pangalan ng participants or na magre-represent sa population sa isang box, halimbawa. Okay? at ilalagay mo yung mga pangalan nila sa isang bowl or sa isang box. Lahat sila may equal chance to be selected. Also, another example is yung yellow page. Okay, dati may yellow page. Sa yellow page na yun, lahat ng tao na nakatira sa isang particular city, okay, ay nandoon yung list ng pangalan nila. Halimbawa, sa yellow page kasi, sorry for too old, kasi yun yung naabutan ko. Sa yellow page na yun, halimbawa, buong Cavite, okay? Sa buong Cavite na may telepono, lahat yun, equal yung chance nila na maging participant kung sila ang gusto mong participants na makuha. Bakit equal chance? Kasi lahat sila doon is listed yung pangalan. At lahat sila doon ay may equal chance na magbunot. Okay? Right? Bakit? Kasi nga, pwedeng, halimbawa, kailangan mo ng 10 participants para dun sa area ng Cavite na gumagamit ng telepono. Okay? So, sa bawat flip mo ng page ng phone book na yon, lahat sila doon ay equal na pwede mong makuha. Okay? That is another example of simple random sampling. We also have two principal methods of random sampling. We have here two, as I mentioned earlier, dalawang principal ng methods ng random sampling. Isa dito ay sampling with replacement and sampling without replacement. Dito sa sampling with replacement, this method requires that an individual selected for the sample be recorded as a sample member and then returned to the population or replaced before the next selection is made. If we select from population of 100 individuals, the probability of selecting any particular individual is 1 over 100. To keep this same probability 1 over 100, for the second selection, it is necessary to return the first individual to the pool before the next is selected, because the probability stays constant. This technique ensures that the selections are independent. We have also the sampling without replacement. This method removes each selected individual from the population before the next selection is made. So for this method guarantees that no individual appears more than once in a single sample. The probability that you will be selected will be increased each time another person is selected and removed from the population. Okay? And we have now, thus, for the simple random sampling, clearly define the population from the which you want to select a sample. Okay? So, kailangan clear, madedefine natin kung saan natin kukunin yung sample sa population. List all the members of the population and use a random process to select individuals from the list. Okay? We also have systematic sampling. For this, begins by listing all the individuals in the population, then randomly picking a starting point on the list. Example, we have 500 population or 500 people, and that 500 people ay magre-represent ng isang population. Ang sample size lang na kukunin natin and tayo yung magsiset nyon ay 50. So, ang gagawin natin ay kukunin natin yung every 10th person on the list. Okay? So, hindi natin kukunin si 1 to 9, 11 to 19, 21 to 29. Okay? So, kukuha lang tayo ng 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on. Para makabuo tayo ng 50 sample. Okay? Kasi 50 lang yung gusto natin kunin. It is very similar to random sampling. Dapat ma-clear muna kung ano ang type ng participants. Pag meron na sa list mo, lahat ng members ng population, tapos select yung random process. Okay? Select individual from the list. Dapat may listahan ka ng population. Lahat sila, tapos kukuha ka ng tao or kukuha ka ng sample mo with that list. Okay? Tanong, is there a bias? Ang sabi natin is si probability dapat non-biased to. Kung kukuha ka ng every 10th person sa list, paano si 11 to 19? Tama? However, hindi magkakaroon ng bias doon kasi ikaw yung nag-set ng every 10th person lang ang kukunin mo. Okay? So, kasi ang gusto mo nga ay makuha lang si 10, 20, 30, and so on na numbers. Pero, hindi mo kukunin si 1 to 9 and si 11 to 19 and the likes. However, high degree ito ng representativeness. However, it has weakness. An easy method for obtaining an essentially random sample, but the selection are not really random or independent. Okay? We have now stratified random sampling. A population usually consists of a variety of identifiable subgroups. Identify the specific subgroups or strata to be included in the sample. Useful when a researcher wants to describe each individual segment of the population or wants to compare the segments. Okay? For this one, from the population, halimbawa gusto mong kunin ang stress level na let's say sa buong school. Kumuha ka ng sample ng grupo. Okay? Example is Cavite State University. Okay? Sa Cavite State University, merong departments. Merong Department of Arts and Science, may Department of Management, Department of Computer Science, Department of Information Technology. Okay? Halimbawa, may College of Law. Okay? May Medicine, may Engineering. Bawat colleges, kukuha ka ng sample at bawat representative, halimbawa, kukuha ka ng tig to 20, yun na yung sample mo. Equal dapat ang size ng kukunin mo ng sample. Okay? Ang advantage nito, it guarantees that each of the different subgroups will be well represented with a relatively large group of individuals in the sample. Kaso, meron itong weakness. Guarantees that each subgroup will have adequate representation but the overall sample is usually not representative of the population. Okay? Kasi nga, meron siyang subgroup na kung saan ay nag-set ka lang ng limit na kukunin mo is 20 lang ni student per department. Okay? Hindi ganun kataas ang representative sample mo ng whole population. Okay? Ng per department. Okay? Next, we have proportionate stratified random sampling, also called simply proportionate random sampling. Okay? A sample is obtained by subdividing the population into strata and then randomly selecting from each strata a number of participants so that the proportion in the sample corresponds to the proportion in the population. Kasi nga, kung mas madami ang population mo, okay, or halimbawa, meron kang strata. Tapos yung strata na to ay magkakaiba sila ng number of students. Halimbawa, Department of Arts and Sciences, meron tayong 100. And HRM, meron tayong 50. Gaano kadaming sample ang kukunin mo per strata kung hindi sila equal ng number of students? Meron tayong example dito. Example, you are interested to get the level of happiness of PLM students or mga nag-aaral sa pamantasan lungsod na Maynila, mga estudyante doon. Okay? Meron kang 300 enrolled students or that is the POP-Ed or the population. Okay? Sa psychology, meron kang 75. Sa architecture, meron kang 100. Sa engineering, meron kang 50. Sa biology, you have 30 and accountancy, 45. Now, paano ang gagawin mo para makuha mo ang dami ng sample na kailangan mo if it is not equal? Ang gagawin mo is the number or this population divided by population per department, okay, or per course divided by the number of the whole population which is 300, okay, times mo siya sa 100. So dito, 75 is the population for this strata, okay, divided by 300 times 100, makakuha ka ng 25%. With that 25%, ilan ang 25% ni 75? 19. And si 100 divided by 300 times mo sa 100, makakuha ka ng 33.33%. Or 33 number of samples, and so on. Okay? So, ganun siya i-compute. However, meron bang bias dito? Okay? So, sabi natin kanina, parang halos lahat ng technique ay may bias. Ang bias dito is kapag mas madami ang population mo, okay, mas madami ang makukuha mong sample. Halimbawa, kay biology student, meron tayo ditong 30 na population at when we do the math, 10% is makakakuha lang tayo ng 3. Okay? Weakness neto guarantees that the composition of the sample in terms of identified strata will be perfectly representative of the composition of the population. But some strata may have limited representation in the sample. Okay? Now let's move to cluster sampling. The individuals in the population are already clustered in pre-existing groups, and the researcher can randomly select groups instead of selecting individuals. So for this, para siyang stratified. Ang pinagkaiba niya, hindi ka na kukuha ng paisa-isa sa grupo na nakuha mo. Halimbawa, 2 colleges lang ang kukunin mo or 2 course lang ang kukunin mo. Tapos, yun na yung sample mo kung may 5 colleges sa isang school or 5 departments sa isang school, kukuha ka lang ng 2 tapos yun na yung sample mo. Okay? Ang disadvantage nito, it is an easy method for obtaining a large or relatively random sample, but the selection are not really random or independent. Kasi nga, you have the power to choose kung ano lang yung department or colleges na kukunin mo. Okay? Now we have combined strategy sampling. Researchers combine 2 or more sampling strategies to select participants. Example, kukuha ka ng poll survey. Sino ang mas mataas ang probability na manalo or makakuha ng maraming boto sa Maynila? Ang gagawin mo, kukuha ka ng sa Maynila, may mga municipality. Okay? Ang tawag doon ay stratified. Tapos, per municipality, malaki yon. Ang kukunin mo lang ay yung 2/3 ng population per municipality. Ang tawag doon ay cluster. Ginagamit yan para mas ma-perfect mo o ma-optimize ang survey kasi nga masyadong malaki ang population. Okay? So, combined strategy sampling ang tawag doon. And we have the advantage and disadvantages of probability sampling methods. The advantage has very good chance producing a representative sample. Okay? And also, it is unbiased. The disadvantage is it is time-consuming. Does not contain the high degree. Okay? It needs to know the whole population really used in a small number of population. Advantage nito kasi nga, ay yung chance niya, they tend to rely on random selection and no biases. Disadvantage nito does not contain high degree of representativeness. Yung example nun is yung proportionate stratified. Mas madami population, mas madami ang sample. Pag onti ang population, mas onti din ang makukuha mong sample. Alright? Okay, so alam na natin kung ano yung probability. Now, let's move forward to non-probability sampling methods. We have convenience sampling. Researchers simply use a participants, those individuals who are easy to get. Okay? Selected under availability and willingness to respond. Weak form of sampling, biased, less expensive, more timely technique. Can be used if there is same characteristics. Halimbawa, gusto mo makuha ang level of happiness ng taong nagtatrabaho sa isang convenience store. So, kung sino lang yung maabutan mo or kung sino lang yung pumayag na makuha or ma-survey, sila lang yung matatanong mo. However, as on the second bullet, selected under availability and willingness to respond. Kasi not all of them are willing sumagot ng survey na gusto mong gawin. Less expensive siya kasi nga nandoon na yung participants mo. Okay? Kung sino lang yung convenient na sumali dun sa study mo. More timely technique, it's because of not all of them are willing dun nga sa gusto mong mangyari. We also have quota sampling. Can ensure that subgroups are equally represented in a convenient sample. Okay? A variation of quota sampling mimics proportionate stratified sampling. Possibly for convenient sample, to use techniques borrowed from systematic sampling or cluster. Okay, sa quota sampling, may pagkakalimbawa to sa proportionate stratified sampling. Okay? So, halimbawa, kung ang quota mo lang na makuha, for that study is 50 lang yung kukunin mo. And the rest, hindi mo na siya kukunin. Kasi nga, meron kang goal na kinukuha na number of samples. Now, let's move to summary. Researchers should be careful to select a sample that representative of the population. Kailangan maingat ang researcher sa pagkuha ng sample mo. Okay? Or magre-represent ng sample mo, ng population. Probability and non-probability. Okay, so we already identified the probability and non-probability. Each sampling method has advantage and disadvantages. Okay, yun yung mga nasabi natin kanina. Alright, so that is the end of this lesson. Lesson number 2 in regards to probability and non-probability techniques. If you have question, you may still reach me sa group page natin. Okay? And hope you learned something today. Thank you for listening, by the way.